Welcome to the Empowered to Connect podcast, where we come together to discuss a healing-centered approach to engagement and well-being for ourselves, our families, and our communities. I'm JD Wilson, and I'm your host of the show. And today on the show, we've got our first intercontinental guests. That's right. We've got Tom and Dawn Jordi coming to us all the way from South Africa, from Johannesburg, South Africa. And they're going to join us today to talk about what their experience has been, both parenting during the COVID, as we all have been, but also more specifically, their work with advocacy for adoption in South Africa, as well as being the only ETC certified parent trainers in not just South Africa, but all of Africa. So what has that been like? And they'll talk about a few of the measures they're taking there to begin offering ETC as a resource to other families in South Africa, which is super interesting. One of the things that you'll notice is that this episode does split into two segments. And so we'll have our part one of our conversation with Tom and Dawn this week. Next week, we will have part two of their conversation. This week, though, we're in for a special treat because Tom does lead off the episode talking about maybe the most embarrassing thing that's happened to him during COVID. So you'll hear us sort of pick up in mid-conversation at the beginning, and Tom will share a story that I will say had both he and I in tears, but for very different reasons. So you'll hear that first, and then the bulk of our interview afterward. We hope you enjoy it. Please welcome now Tom and Dawn Jordi.
I was taking a kid through to our therapy room, and they got these big social distancing stickers to remind the kids to stay 1.5 meters from each other. So I think, because of all our ETC training and those folks in Memphis who keep drumming it into us, connect. So my thinking is always the best way to connect is to have fun. So I said, hey, let's jump from this sticker to that sticker. And they clean the floor every morning with sanitizer. And obviously it had eaten away the glue. So as I jumped from one sticker to the next sticker decided that it would fly forward, but my foot didn't think that was a good idea. So I crumbled to the floor, said to the child, I'll pick you up from class a little bit later. And I was carried to my office, and then I passed out because it was so sore.
So like you jump and you're like face down. You're like on the ground in pain with that kid sitting there.
It was quite. I held it back. I jumped, I slid, I felt my foot pop, and I looked up and I smiled at him, and I just said, I'll see you just now. Because I don't want to scare him, because I felt safety and all that stuff. You need to
Man, that's awesome. So cool. I mean, not awesome that you broke your ankle, but awesome that you're like, caring about safety, all the things. You are such the counselor. In the midst of your pain, you're still thinking about
I was connecting and loving, and I was even going to offer him a compromise.
I mean, the kid's laughing at him. While this is all happening, he thinks it's hilarious.
Look at this guy's on the floor. He looks like he's about to cry. What a baby!
Man.
And the best part is the schools with cameras everywhere, so I'm waiting to get the film.
Oh
so
my gosh!
Say to the kids, don't run in the hallway, and now you know why. You slip on stickers.
Tom, I feel like we should just stop, and that's the episode. We just put that out as the episode.
It's made me realize all my control issues. I have to be driven everywhere. Oh. I'm loving this.
Yeah, I'm not.
It's insane.
Okay, how did your kids react to it?
A shame. I took Tom to the hospital, so I had to call them out of class to let them know that I wasn't going to pick them up. So they were pretty scared because, why would I arrive and call them out of class? And
right.
But shame, they're fine. They're actually fine now.
They keep wanting to wrestle around my foot, and we're like, oh.
Oh my gosh. All right. As we said, we're here with our guests, Tom and Dawn Jordi, and they are coming to us from South Africa today. So, guys, thanks for being with us today.
Such a pleasure. Great to be here.
Awesome.
Mo Ottinger is also here. He's attending to his dog, so he'll be back momentarily. But what I wanted to start our conversation with today is obviously we met, I guess, almost a year ago in the ETC trainer training, so the Train the Trainer weekend, and hated each other and couldn't stand talking to each other, and so it was natural.
Couldn't wait to get out of there.
Natural to not have you guys on today. But one of the things that I would love to hear is kind of y'all's story of how you got connected to ETC, and then what has your experience been as trainers, kind of in your community, and what have those classes been like so far for you? So I guess first question is, how did you get connected to ETC, and then what was the draw to come to training last year?
Oh yeah. Well, our journey with adoption and that sort of world started around 10 years ago. And then, as with all of us, we start to realize, hey, we've got these skills, and for some reason, they don't seem to apply to every child in the world. What's going on with it? You know, this tool belt is somewhat empty. So I think on our journeys, we came across various people, and eventually came across TBRI and Dr. Karen Purvis, and we went to the conference. I think it was a couple of months before we came to the States. And we found out that there was training to be trainers in the States. And I think just through that conference, looking at the content, the books, and the tools and that, we just thought, this is something that we have benefited from just in terms of TBRI. And the idea of being TBRI practitioners, just in terms of a cost factor, was huge, but also it wasn't available at the time because obviously they go through different periods in the year.
Sure.
And we went onto your website and we saw this Train the Trainer thing. So we thought, you know what, I'm risk averse to the hilt. so I sat and I made a deal with God, and I said, you know what, I'm going to apply because that's not my nature, and I'll apply. And if they come back and there's like smiley faces and laughter, then we know. But then I think it was Tana came back and said, yeah, we'd love to have you guys over there. And then I got a bit of...
I think we both at that point panicked.
We're like, uh-oh, what have we done now? So then I said, okay, let's lay out another fleece. I said, do you have any scholarships? Because that's what we do in Africa. We try and get some help.
Yeah. You're the worst.
And then I thought that's going to close the door straight away, because come on.
Right.
And then Tana came back and says, yeah, we'll give you 80% off. I was like, I know. Now I actually have to find funding. And then we thought, well, this seems too good to be true, so let's just run with it. And we prayed about it, and then out of the nowhere, one Sunday morning, somebody from our church had heard about it and said, hey, we want to pay for it for you. And we were just floored.
Oh, wow.
And that's
I mean, we were expecting things to come in drips and drabs.
Yes,
that
we
was
started
the kind
a
of
funding program.
And one day someone said, we're fully paying for everything.
Yeah, what do you need? I mean, it's like, you say the number and you kind of like wait for the laughter to stop and it's done. And,
wow.
And that was it. And that was we just thought, what on earth is going on? Doors are opening that we couldn't open. And at that time, we got 4 kids, one biological and three by adoption. So we've been using the various TBRI tools and that on and off, trying our best in that. But we just thought this would be an amazing opportunity if the doors would open, and then they opened.
Yeah.
And it just started just a whirlwind ride, And at the time, it was amazing because in South Africa there was various laws that were trying to shut down adoption, change various things around children's rights and that sort of thing. And during that time, we created a video, and I've been on the news and stuff, and it was like kind of cool. It was like, this is all new, this is all funky, and I thought, well, let's throw another fleece out there for the States and see if that works. Let's really see it. And the door opened, and we were floored. And then we had visa issues, and they came through, and it's just like it was one thing after another.
Yeah.
So we were so blessed to be able to be there, and
Yeah, and I think for us as well, we knew that there was no training like this here in South Africa.
Yeah.
And so we just were completely changed. Our parenting was changed. Everything about the way we approached our kids changed just from the connected child.
Yeah.
And we just desperately wanted other people to be changed as well. So,
but I must tell you this story that I only realized like a month or two after we'd come back. So when we landed in New York, I actually wanted to go straight to Memphis because my risk aversion didn't want me to get on another plane.
Right.
So I actually got an Uber from New York to Newark.
Well, one of them.
The other one. You guys have so many. We've got like one.
Right.
So we got there and we're waiting, and it was Newark. Yeah, let's pick that one. And we were just sitting in line waiting to get on the plane, and we heard our names over the loudspeaker calling us to the front, and we thought, what's going on here? And they bumped us up to first class. And it was another, just a miracle. And we sat there going, yes, please. This is like we're international travelers in first class now. But wait, it gets better. So I said to myself, I've got an affinity for country music. On my bucket list is I want to drive in my truck, wearing my Stetson, listening to country music between a cornfield. And I'm serious. This is legit. So I said, when I get off the plane at Memphis, and before we'd gone to Memphis, I was walking in Memphis, I was jamming it in my car, and I was just really getting into the mood, I had no idea what Beale Street was.
Right.
And, 10 foot off of Beale, I think we actually made up the word. We didn't know what Beale was or 10 foot, it was weird.
Right.
Anyway, so we got there, and we got through, and I walked off the plane, and I said to Dawn, I don't care, I'm putting these earphones in, and I'm playing Walking
I actually made him put the earphones in. He was going to do it loud.
Yeah, okay. So we start walking down, and I'm listening, and I had the whole thing. It was surreal. It was VR, reality goggles wouldn't have made it. But a couple of months later, I was preparing for a preach at church, and it just something dawned on me. I don't know what it was. I can't even remember the context of the preach. It must have been something around, God providing for you. But the one line in that song says he got a first class ticket, and he was blue as a boy can be. And I'm sitting there going, are you kidding me? You opened every single door to get to Memphis. I walked off the plane into Memphis with my first class ticket, listening to the song that was made for me.
That's amazing.
And I sat there for a second going, what? I actually had to catch myself and going, I'm looking through the words and going, that was me,
That's incredible. I love that so much.
It was fully God. He opened doors that it was bizarre. And it was
I'll chime in. I mean, we had all these applications to come be trainers, and it's always humbling to read through just for people from everywhere, and I remember going, South Africa, like, are they for
that?
Would they really come to Memphis? Do they know that this isn't like,
on the road?
I didn't know what Zoom was back then, Like, we're going to meet with people. And so, we're grateful. We're grateful and humbled that you were willing to come. So,
we're incredibly grateful that you picked us to come.
So thinking through, you guys come through for the training and go back, and for any people listening who have ever gone to the ETC simulcast or have taken the courses, you kind of walk back into your house ready, like Superman parent mode. Like I'm ready now. Oh, I'm ready. I'm connecting with everybody now. I've got all the tools ready. What was your experience coming back?
Which one do you want?
Right. What was your experience coming back home like? And then when you guys prepared to teach your first course, talk about that process, if you will, with us.
Well, I think if you remember when we left Memphis, it was massively daunting because, in South Africa, our adoption rate is so pitifully low. We've got around about 3,500 abandoned babies surviving every year. So we've got a friend who's just opened a baby house and stuff. The numbers are silly, and the rate is so very low. We've got about 500,000 adoptable children. That's not orphans. That's just the adoptable ones. So it's one of those stupid problems that we really should be able to solve. But so we came back knowing that these tools are necessary, but also knowing that part of what we do with our ministry, the Father Heart, is to raise awareness, which is what we were doing.
Yeah.
Then we were raising funds to help other people adopt. But the third arm was to equip people, and we didn't have that. And on the back of ETC, then we could come back and say, well, we've got this third one. So we came back, but it was quite daunting because, that we don't have, in our church, we're the only couple that's adopting. There's not a massive adoption community around us. And even those who do, still, many of them seem to think that the same parenting skills and tools that you have for your biological kids and that will work exactly the same for kids with trauma. It's only people who actually go down a road to try and really understand what is the whys and stuff behind behavior that would really know it. So there wasn't really any, waiting crowd of people. So come and feed us. And also to mention that there's only trainers in the States. I think there's Greece. And so we're holding down the Southern Hemisphere. So I'm also sitting here going, so no pressure. So I think we came back, and then one of the big challenges we have is our currency, which is a challenge. So when we go to the States and we look at the amazing resources in the books, but now we have to get them from the States to South Africa.
Yeah.
And so we sit there going, how's that practically going to work? And so you've got to get people on a course. Over 8 weeks, we're only in Joburg. Geography, how does that going to play into stuff? So what we first did was get friends around us who had adopted. We had a small community, and then other friends around us who had kids who'd experienced trauma to sort of run through it with them and pilot it through them. And it worked so well. It felt so comfortable and so right.
That's great.
That's good.
Yeah. And then
I think that was about 2 months after we'd gotten back. Okay.
And if I remember right, you just finished your first kind of open course a little bit ago, right? Via Zoom?
Yeah. So we that was another thing we wanted to do one this year, and then social distancing and the stickers on the floor messed with everyone, and we didn't know what to do. And then you guys graciously said no, just weird times call for different ways. So we got everything out digitally, but what it allowed us to do was to spread the reach. So we had people from the Cape, we had people from KwaZulu-Natal, we had people from our province.
This is like people from 12 hours away, people from 6 hours away.
That's a lot for us.
Just if you don't know where the Cape and KwaZulu-Natal is.
Well, I know, of course. I know all those places.
No, you know. I didn't want to point it. But we know. So that was cool. Obviously, what we lacked in the ability to connect face-to-face, for them to create a bit of a support group, we were able to gain with more of, we could bypass geography, which was one of my concerns with how do you run an 8-9 week course around the country, because I can't move to different places for 9 weeks.
Right.
And we're the only ones here. How did that work? So the Zoom actually, it helped a lot. So it ticked a lot of boxes. It wasn't the most ideal, because I think still face-to-face and in a room and being able to touch all the sensory stuff.
And also just being able to have that kind of relationship around the table, you know, but
it was surprisingly nice, and a lot of them were still in their pajamas in bed. So they appreciated that as well. So I think we were pleasantly surprised. It actually went really well. And those were people who went on the simulcast that went, another lady who went to the conference last year. She ran the simulcast and started a Facebook group. So we thought on the back of that, we wanted to capitalize on the simulcast and say, hey, we're here, we're running it. It'll have to be via Zoom, who's in. So
that's awesome.
And so, so we had about 14, about 14 people who did it over Zoom.
That's great.
So we were pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
And we loved it again. It was really cool.
So, Tom, you mentioned being a counselor and working in schools there. Will you talk a little bit about your work as a counselor in the schools, and then how has TBRI principles and ETC, how have those things, how have you seen them equip you in the school, and are there some particular ways that you've been able to integrate the practices in your school work that might be applicable for folks in different school contexts?
Yeah. So I think I started around 12 to 14 years ago. I was a youth pastor, and then through various things that ended, and I was called up one day by a principal whose husband I knew, saying that we need a counselor in the school, and we know that you were a youth pastor for a couple of years. Would you be interested? So I said, yeah. It was 1 day a week, and that's 10 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a wonderful journey. And I think at first it was just sort of leveraging off of, knowing how to connect with young people, being a space for them to vent, being an encourager and that sort of thing. And then over the years, it's obviously become something that I've been able to draw from experience on. But you're dealing with kids where there's divorce, perhaps there's death, maybe there's just simple anxiety in a school setting, maybe there's bullying, sort of various across spectrum sort of things, from just the general day-to-day, it's difficult being in school, to some severe stuff that you're helping them navigate with, whether it be a more longer term, more shorter term. And I think for me, the biggest thing with TBRI ETC is it's helped me to be able to listen more. It certainly caused me to be more frustrated with teachers.
Yeah.
Because the moment you get a certain behavior, the behavior is the child, and that's where they stop. Not all of them, but many. They'll say, I see a behavior, I see a child doing that behavior, therefore the child has a problem, therefore the child is the problem. But the moment you press pause and you go, well, let's ask why. And then you start to scratch the surface and that. And what it does is it empowers you. It also empowers the teacher to have more empathy, to have more compassion. And then straight away, you're able to connect better. And then on the back of connecting, you're able to help more. And also this year during lockdown, I worked online through, you guys have got something called the National Institute of Trauma and Loss in Children. Okay. And I became a trauma practitioner through them. And it's amazing how the different things work through, and they pull in ACEs and attachment theory and all that sort of stuff. And again, it's about chasing the why. It's about asking the stuff. It's about dealing with your stuff first and seeing how you've been affected and how that affects your filter. And then when you deal with a child. So in a school setting, it certainly allowed me to be able to not just look at the behavior. And it's allowed me to sort of push pause and hopefully encourage the teachers to push pause and look beyond the behavior and say, hold on a second, if you're going to address the behavior, you're not going to solve this challenge, because it's not a problem that needs to be solved. It's perhaps a child that needs to be loved and encouraged and supported in that. So that's definitely what ETC is, puts firmly on the radar on that when dealing with kids from a counseling perspective. And I think that.
Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. I mean, man, what a nugget right there. I mean, seriously, when we think about kids, so often they get labeled by their behavior. And if it's just the one thing, what is the why behind the behavior? And we do it. As parents, we've said that over and over of, just 15 minutes ago before we jumped on, I had to run out into the hall, get a dog, and there was a kid doing something. And I was like, what's going on? Okay, this is what's really going on. It is the why, but it's good. So good.
And I think also one of the great things is just when you take a step back and you're asking the why, it just helps the relationship, because you don't react. You actually you want to know. You actually start to care and go, hold on a second, you're doing this, and it's not just about medicating this child, and it starts you on a journey to learn more as well. Simple things like the majority of the ADHD symptoms are exactly the same as trauma symptoms, and things like that alone. You sit there going, well, maybe we should start reassessing ADHD, and but in a school setting where teachers have got I've got to teach, I've got to get through this. And then you bring in Corona and you bring in all this and all the rest of it. So placing that word why on the radar is so important, because at the moment people are just trying to get through, and they're still trying to find this normal or get back to normal, which is not going to happen.
Right.
Yep.
But if you look at the why, it gives you the breathing space to perhaps navigate it a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, that's a word. That is great. Dawn, I wonder for you, have there been, you guys mentioned the lockdown, and obviously your school is starting to go back now. Do you guys feel like there have been any practices or particular things that for you at home have been the most helpful, most useful, or most practical? Like, have you noticed yourself using or needing one tool more than others in your parenting during the lockdown?
Yeah, I think one thing that Tom wrote, and I think he wrote it to you, was definitely owning your stuff, because so much more of your stuff comes out when you're all stuck together for this extended amount of time.
Yes.
So we've been doing definitely a lot of digging, a lot of okay, why is this triggering me? Why am I'm chasing my own why here? There's definitely a lot of that, and I think also just being aware of our kids are under stress, and so their responses at the moment are stress responses, and just being aware of that, and just having a lot more grace for them. Having a lot more grace for ourselves, just having a lot more grace, like on the whole.
A lot more redos.
A lot of redos. Yeah, so I think just keeping that on my radar especially has helped a lot. Just to let things go. I think in this time, trying to stick to things that were working before, it kind of just makes things go a bit crazy.
Yeah.
So we have it's been grace and let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's going to do it for our conversation with Tom and Dawn today. Like we said, tune in next week. We're going to have part 2 of our conversation with Tom and Dawn, where they talk a lot about their work doing racial reconciliation in a post-apartheid South Africa. And they kind of explain the history of their community there, as well as just the need for the work and what they're doing. Also, what it's like to be a transracial adoptive family in South Africa during this time. And so it really interesting conversation with them. You will not want to miss it. So make sure you tune in there. I also mentioned last week, we are close to jumping off on our series on transracial adoption, and several conversations specifically about those dynamics and what that looks like. And so Tom and Dawn's conversation will serve as sort of a precursor to that conversation. They'll get that conversation started, albeit talking about it in a different context from most of you who are listening today. And lastly, I'll just say this, as we gear up for that conversation, obviously around the world right now, but specifically in the U.S., there are countless conversations that are happening centered around race, about justice, about social injustices, systemic injustice, all of that. And those of us who are transracial adoptive families can often feel caught in the middle of those conversations. And so we are working hard to equip our listeners with everything that you might need to navigate those conversations with grace and with courage, to be able to be civil, and also to voice your opinions and to have your opinions heard, also to learn and to be able to set out in that journey well. And so we hope that you've been enjoying this conversation so far. Again, we'd love to hear your feedback. And so those of you who have sent feedback in, it's been incredibly helpful. Thank you so much for doing that. It's really helping us to guide and to be able to steer these conversations in a way that's most helpful to you. And so if there's a conversation or a topic that you would love to hear about, please do send it in to us. Let us know, because we would love to steer more of the conversations in the way that you are wanting to have them steered, and resource you, the listeners, our family, in any way we possibly can. So that's it for us today on the ETC podcast. Our show is engineered and edited and mixed and all of that by the one and only Kyle Wright. Tad Jewett does provide our music, and he is quite a gentleman as well. That's it for us today. For Mo Ottinger, for Tom and Dawn Jordi, and for myself, this is the ETC podcast, and we'll see you next week.